4 and welcome to Wednesday's writing video. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's waggle lesson with Miss Bridgewater. Let's take a look at what we're going to do today.
So, before we get going with today's lesson, let's just do a quick check and recap on our learning from Monday's lesson. On Monday, we looked at the features of a river and the different parts of a river. So, can you remember the names of the main features of a river that we learned about on Monday? You might want to grab your river diagram that you drew on Monday if you've still got it. You might want to have a look back at your notes. If not, just take a look at the picture that you can see on the screen. Look at the key words and see if you can remember where they go. Where is the mouth? Where is the tributary? Where is the source? Pause the video, have a go now. Okay, so now you've had a chance to do that, let's have a little look together. So from Monday's lesson, we learned that the source is where the river starts. It's usually found high up in the mountains on the high land where the river begins. Then as the river starts to wind down the mountain, it flattens out and begins to make big bends and curves, which are called meanders. Sometimes smaller little rivers or streams join a larger river. They are called tributaries. As the river continues to flow through the land, it gets wider and wider and flattens out. On either side of the river, there's land called the floodplain, which is what floods when the river bursts its bank. Sometimes tiny little islands are formed and they are called deltas. And at the end of the river, where it meets the sea, is the mouth. How did you get on? So, Jack has asked us to find out if it is a good idea to build houses next to a river. Before we write our letter, we need to find out more about each river's feature so we can report back to him. So our learning objective today is to discuss and record ideas together. So let's take a look at some of our key vocabulary for today's lesson. We've got the word synonym. Now a synonym, as some of you will remember, is a word that means exactly the same as another word. It's just another way of saying a word. We're going to be using thesauruses today. Hopefully you will all remember that this is where you can find synonyms for words. In a dictionary gives us the meaning, but a thesaurus gives us synonyms, other ways to say the same word. We're going to be making a bit of a plan together before we write our letter back to Jack. In our letter to Jack, we're going to write a paragraph on each feature of the river. We are going to tell him if it is a good idea to build there or not. So, when we write back to Jack, we don't want to just give one reason for why we can or can't build by a certain feature of the river. We need to give him as much information as possible for his report. So we're going to have a little think together about each feature of the river and what the land might look like, what it might be like, what it might feel like at each feature of the river. So if we start with the source, let's take a look at these pictures. These are two pictures of two different rivers, the source of those rivers. I can see that they're really high up in the mountains. This one looks like here the river's starting right at the top of this mountain. In the distance you can see these really tall towering mountains over here. Here it looks really quite rocky and steep. There's a man standing watching that river travelling down from its source, making little waterfalls as it trickles down the mountain. So I know that at the source it is, I'm going to think of an adjective here to describe the land at the source. I think I'm going to say mountainous. That's a good adjective to describe what the land looks like at the source of the river. So I know that at the source it is space, mountainous. And I want my full stop at the end of that sentence. So I know that at the source it is very mountainous. Can you think of any synonyms for the adjective mountainous? Remember, synonyms are words that mean exactly the same. So can you think of any words that mean exactly the same as mountainous? Can anyone remember what we can use to help us find synonyms for words? Have a little think now. That's right, it's a thesaurus. A thesaurus gives us lots of synonyms for lots of different words. Let's look in the thesaurus together for the word mountainous. Which ones are your favourite?
Okay, so here's our thesaurus that we use in school. We're going to look for the word mountainous in it. So if you can remember, at the side it's got all the letters So we're going to look for M for mountainous. Flick through. Here we go. Oh, perfect. I found it. Here is mountain. Now remember, sometimes in the thesaurus, not all the words are accurate for how we want to use them. So we're going to have a look. Mountain, it gives us a little bit of a definition of what mountain is. And then it says things you might see on or near a mountain, avalanche, boulder. They're not good adjectives to describe what the land is like at a mountain. Let's keep looking. Ooh, some words to describe a mountain. They're going to be good adjectives to describe what it's like. Barren, craggy, forbidding, jagged, lofty, massive, misty, rocky, rugged, snow-capped, soaring, towering, treacherous. There's lots of words in there to describe a mountain. What one do you think would be good to use to describe the land where the source is?
As an extra challenge, as well as the word in the thesaurus I've just shown you, you could have a go at using an online thesaurus to find some adjectives to describe what the land at the source is like. I'll show you now how you can find one. You can find an online thesaurus using Google. Type in the word thesaurus, search it, and click on www.thesaurus.com. This will take you to an online thesaurus. Up here, in this box, you can write the word that you are trying to find synonyms for. I remember in the thesaurus, one of the synonyms for mountainous was rocky. And I do think, remembering back to those pictures that we looked at the source, at the top of those mountains, it probably is quite rocky because the river starts to trickle down the rocks. So in this box up here, I'm going to type the word rocky, press search, and it's going to come up with lots of different words, different synonyms for rocky, for the adjective rocky. So we've got craggy, jagged, rough, bouldered. The land might be quite hard up there at the source, as it is rocky and mountainous up there. Remember, in thesauruses, not all the words work for everything you are trying to describe. So you just need to look through them carefully and see if they'd work for describing the land at the source. So, using your own ideas, any of the words that we've looked at together in the school thesaurus, and if you've had a go at the online thesaurus, you can think about the words you found there as well. Write down as many synonyms as you can for the word mountainous. You could write them by the source on your river picture from Monday's lesson if you still have it. You could write them in a different colour, maybe around where you wrote the word source. But don't worry if you don't have your river picture anymore. You could draw one now, or you could just get another piece of paper and write down as many different synonyms as you can think of for the word mountainous that we've had a look at today. Okay, here are some of my words that I've written down that I found in the classroom thesaurus and using the online thesaurus today. So these are my synonyms that I've found for mountainous. I found jagged, rugged, rocky, forbidding, craggy, barren, rough, because all those rocks would probably be quite pointy and sharp at the top of the mountain, and treacherous as well, quite dangerous up there. You'd have to be careful where you walk to not fall off the rocks or step on the source of the river. Okay, so now you've had a go at finding some synonyms for the word mountainous and written them on your plan or down on a piece of paper. We're going to have a think about the other features of a river: the tributary, the meander, the floodplain, the deltas, and the mouth area. I've had a go at thinking of some adjectives to describe the land at each different feature of the river. So at the tributary, I've thought it would be quite muddy because that's where the two rivers join, so there'd probably be quite a lot of water flowing there. At the meander, I thought it would be quite stable because, as we learned in the video on Monday's lesson, that's where the river starts to flatten out and flow more freely. So I think it would be quite stable by that meander, quite solid. The floodplain, I put it would be quite wet because, as we know, the floodplain is what gets flooded when there's so much rain that the river bursts its banks. The delta, I said it would be quite lonely. That's the adjective I put for the delta, lonely, because the delta is that island that's out there at the end of the river. So it'd probably be quite lonely out there on its own. And for the mouth, which is where the river meets the sea and it becomes really wide, I put quite flat and open. So those are the two adjectives that I've put for that feature of the river. So what I want you to do now is use the online thesaurus, use your brain, or use the school thesaurus that I'm going to show you clips of in a minute to find synonyms for the words muddy, stable, wet, lonely, flat, and open. So by the end of this lesson, we'll have lots and lots of words in this big word bank to describe all the different features of the river. In yesterday's lesson, when Miss Bridgewater went through the waggle, I remember she said that there was expanded noun phrases. So these adjectives are going to help us write our expanded noun phrases when we write our letter back to Jack. So the more we can think of now, the better it's going to be when we start to write our letter next week. If you can think of any other adjectives to describe the land at the tributary, the meander, the floodplain, the delta or the mouth, you can have a go at writing those down as well. But I want you to start by using the thesaurus, the online one and the one I'm about to show you, to find synonyms for these words here. So our chili challenge is today, chili 1. I want you to find 2 synonyms for each adjective that I've just shown you for each feature of the river. Chili 2, apply your knowledge of how to use a thesaurus, either the online one or the one that I'm going to show you now, to find as many synonyms as you can for each of the adjectives on the plan that I just showed you on the previous page. And Chili 3, you're going to do exactly the same, create a word bank of synonyms for each feature of the river. But Chili 3, your challenge is to try and up-level your adjectives as much as you can to make them as exciting and as descriptive as you can for our letter back to Jack next week.
Okay, so here's our thesaurus that we use in school. I'm going to show you each adjective that we've come up with together on the plan for you to have a look at in the thesaurus and pick your favourite ones that you think would be good to describe that part of the river. So we're going to start with the tributary, and for the adjective that I came up with for that was muddy. So I've used the thesaurus, I've found the word muddy. Here it is, and I'm going to show you that now. So have a look through those words, pick the ones that you think would be appropriate to describe the land at the tributary. Remember, you're looking for adjectives. So what ones do you think would be good? Maybe you could pick a few of your favourite and write those down now. Okay, after you've had a go at muddy, we're going to have a go at the meander now, and the adjective that I thought of to describe the land at the meander was stable. So I found S in the thesaurus, and here is the word stable for you. Again, have a look through, see what ones you think would be appropriate to describe the land at the meander. Pause the video now. Okay, now to move on to the floodplain. We all know that the floodplain will be quite wet. So I found the word wet in the thesaurus. Here it is here. You could pause the video now, have a read of those words and see which ones you think would be appropriate, what adjective you think would be good to describe the land on the floodplain that would be quite wet. What are good synonyms for wet? Okay, the delta next. Now the adjective that we said for the delta was lonely, because it's those little islands that are out there in the middle of the river, formed and left all by themselves. So I found L in the thesaurus, and here's the word lonely, the adjective lonely. What synonyms do you think would be good to describe the land at the delta? What ones would work to put in our letter to Jack? Pause the video now, write down your favourite ones. Okay, our final river feature is the mouth of the river, where it opens up and it joins the sea. So I said the adjective that we came up with would be flat. So here it is, I found flat in the thesaurus. Now it goes over 2 pages here, so I can't zoom in as much. But have a read through of the word flat and see what adjectives you would think would be appropriate to describe the land at the mouth. What synonyms are good for flat?
Well done, everybody. You've done some really fantastic research today on lots of different adjectives that we could use in our letter to Jack next week. I've just put some of the words that I found here, the different synonyms I found for the parts of the river. So for The tributary, which was muddy, I found words such as mucky, filthy, boggy, marshy, waterlogged, wet, sodden. For the stable meander, we could also say the land's quite secure, it's quite firm, solid, strong land. The wet floodplains, we can say they're quite damp, soaked, waterlogged, drenched, muddy, boggy, soggy. And on the Igniter video, when I went down to the river with some of the other teachers, Miss Bridgewater stood on the floodplain and she said it was quite sodden and soggy, so those are good words to describe the floodplain. The lonely delta, other synonyms for lonely, lonesome, solitary, abandoned, deserted, isolated. The flat mouth was quite even, level, smooth, or the open land at the mouth was unrestricted, unenclosed and extensive. You've done a really good job today, Year 4. We've now got a fantastic word bank of adjectives that we can use in our letter writing back to Jack next week. Fantastic job, everybody. Tune back for your next writing lesson tomorrow. See you all soon.